Hi, I'm Liz Toombs, your host for Sorority Chat, the podcast about all things Greek housing, decorating, and beyond. Thank you so much for being here and listening. I hope that you enjoy what you're hearing on each episode from me and the guests on the show. And if you are, please share with a friend and leave us a review. Happy listening. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am very excited about this week's guest. Today we have joining us Miss Jennifer Daniel from Polished Peyton, an etiquette company. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello, Liz. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm excited to be with all of you.
Yes, I'm excited that you're here as well. So I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about you, just like a little bit of background here. So let's see here. You have been an etiquette teacher for 20 years, and you started out at the Cloister Hotel on Sea Island.
I did. I worked there in college and moved there after I graduated from LSU, and it just blossomed into that, which was great. I had an education background, so that was fun.
Yeah. So given that you and I met for the first time at the Cloister on Sea Island because we were attending a conference there, I have to imagine it was kind of like a fairy tale land to work there a little bit.
It was, especially my first real job was actually at the Cloister Hotel on Sea Island. It is a fairyland. If you've never been there, it's beautiful. It's on the ocean. If you play golf, it's great. So it was wonderful. And it was a wonderful opportunity for me. As I mentioned, I had an education background. I never even imagined I would become an etiquette protocol consultant. But the journey led that way. So it's been great. It's been lots of fun. I've met lots of people from all over and ended up living here, which I think was a shocker to most people because I am originally from Louisiana.
Okay. All right. So you've talked about Louisiana twice now. You went to LSU and you were a Kappa Kappa Gamma there, right?
I was a Kappa Kappa Gamma. My mom was, my little sister was. All of my family, we were Kappas, but we do love the Greek system, not just Kappas. I do have cousins that were other things, but yes, so I'm definitely an LSU fan and a Kappa Kappa Gamma fan.
Yeah. Well, I think that's neat to be able to have that family thread, through with the, I guess, shared experience with the Greek system.
Right.
I think that's kind of a cool story to have. Okay. So like I said, you and I, we met on Sea Island. We were attending, the Southern Coterie, or, affectionately known as the Southern Sea. They held a summit on the island. It is a lot of S and C words when you start talking about that. But yeah, so we were attending that in-person conference, and we just struck up a conversation and got to talking about my work in the Greek industry, your experience going through the Greek system in college, and then some of the things that you're doing within your business. And we'll kind of get to that a little bit later. But I think the best place to start is kind of talking to our listeners about what etiquette is, how it is that you help people with it, and where it falls in place in today's society. Because I think some people have the misconception that etiquette is kind of something that's gone by the wayside. And so I'd love to hear from you, working in it all the time, just kind of what it is that you offer and how it has its place.
Thank you so much. And you're definitely correct. Most people think when I say I'm an etiquette teacher, they're like, I mean, do you really have work? And I'm like, I do. I have business.
Yeah.
Today, etiquette is a lot different than it was when my mom was growing up, my grandmother was growing up. I will have moms look at me and say, are you joking? Like, you want me to eat dinner with my family, sit down and eat dinner with my family twice a week? I do. Yes, because it promotes social skills, self-esteem. But they automatically think I want them to set the table with silver and china. I don't want them to do that. I don't even want them to cook. If you know me well, I don't cook a lot. I get takeout. I get things to go. Etiquette is so important in today's world because really what it is, it's getting along with people. It's being respectful, being kind. People have this vision of that etiquette is this stuffy, sitting up straight. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Downton Abbey, but that's not what etiquette is. Etiquette is getting along with others.
I imagine my hand being slapped with a ruler if I picked up the wrong fork at dinner when I think of old school etiquette, I think.
Yeah, same. And I will agree with that. I will, because I grew up one of 4 children. I had 2 brothers and a sister. And so you can imagine if you have boys in your family, nothing was ever calm and perfect because the boys are fun and a little more squirmy than girls are. But, my goal, I was a teacher and I have an education degree from LSU and I have a master's in counseling. And I really do feel that plays into so much of how I run my etiquette business and teach my classes. I want people to communicate simple things. I want you to eat with your family at least twice a week at the kitchen bar or at your table. And I want everyone in the family, mom, dad included, to put those phones away. I want you all to look at each other. I want you all to talk. I want people to know how to have a conversation outside of text, because that's going to follow you as you go through high school and communicate with people, as you interview for jobs. So etiquette plays, I really do feel, a more important role now than it ever has, because technology, and Liz, you and I have talked about this with COVID. You and I did pivot in our businesses and came up with other things. COVID changed a lot. It changed a lot for the children growing up today. There's more technology than ever, but we want to make sure that these young people can have a conversation face to face, eye to eye, look at people with all ages. I have young children. I want them to be able to speak with adults face to face. So I do feel it's important. I teach classes for all ages, starting at age 5. I work with people on social etiquette, business etiquette. I will help people. This sounds crazy. I will help people figure out, I'm not a wedding planner, but oftentimes I will become a part of it to help figure out really why is someone sitting here and how's the best way to handle this situation? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that comes in a little with the counseling degree, but etiquette, we want everyone to get along at the party. And we're not going to make anybody mad, But then etiquette comes into play also with business functions. The CEO of a company, the wife is not coming. So who are we putting by him, and what will that do? We want to think of others at all times. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. I think that's a very simplified way of breaking it down. Not simple in terms of bad, but just making it very relatable for people. It's not about, like you said, setting the table with fine china and doing things like that. I like it. You've related it to how you relate with other people. And that makes it really applicable.
Thank you. I think so too. But it is true. The first thing people think of is what you and I just said, sitting at table and your grandmother slapping. But that's not, I tell parents, the last thing I'm worried about is if your child used the salad fork and the main fork. That's going to come. They're going to be with me. Know that this is it. But that's really not what I'm going for at the end of this school year. I have a whole nother list of things that are more important than that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you hit it on the head when you said that you want children to understand how to have conversations face to face. I think I mentioned this when we had lunch. When a child or a teenager looks me in the eye when they're speaking to me, I want to throw confetti in the air because it is so unusual. And I know how awkward it feels for them to do that. And so it is such a great thing to see them do it and to put it into practice, because those skills, like you said, are only going to translate when it comes to the business world. And it's just going to help them as they continue to grow up.
Yes, I think so too. I really do. So it's fun. I help a number of mothers raising children that they work full time and they're busy, but they do want to know, just tell me what I should do each week. Give me a couple things. Mm-hmm. And really, that's what it's going to take, because a long time ago, etiquette was taught in the school system, all school systems. People did cotillion all the time. But really what it takes now is someone at your house, just a few things a week. Hey, let's work on this week. And making it fun. Children learn, adults too, much better when it's fun and you can talk about it. And if you just work on a few things and not make it so stuffy, they're going to eventually, it's going to sink in,
Yeah, you're right. So then let's talk about for the sorority world. So women going through recruitment, women being on the chapter side of recruitment. Just what are your thoughts in terms of how etiquette plays in there, and maybe some tips and thoughts you have for them to put into practice?
Absolutely. You know, I of course I was like, whoa, even though I had pivoted and done virtual etiquette classes during COVID, when I kept hearing we're going to do the first round of rush via Zoom, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. But they had to do that. That was the safety. That was absolutely the right choice for sure. But I remember thinking and talking to some girls just from the small town I live in and where I'm from. They were very nervous about that because all they've heard is, you know, you're going to the house, you're going to meet some people. Talking to someone online is completely different. The body language, are you making eye contact? I definitely feel, I mean, technology is great. I love it. But I feel like I started reminding people, for me, we need to really think about, okay, sorority life and what it does for people, what it did for me, what it did for people I've interviewed that people can see in the class I did, you know, the friendships you make, the philanthropy that in the entire Panhellenic system does, and the leadership skills. So I started going back to that the more I thought of it. And how that relates to etiquette really boils down to the skills you have to get along with others, whether it's via Zoom or you're standing in the sorority fraternity house. How are you getting along with others? Well, you're getting along with others because you're listening. You and I are doing that to each other right now, whether we're on technology or we're sitting at the cloister having a cup of coffee.
I would rather be at the cloister right now, for the record.
I know. But the skills are the same. And you know, the listening, the looking at each other, your body language, that you're not holding your cell phone. I mean, this is a pack of gum, but you're not. So you can I look at high schoolers all the time when I walk in a restaurant, they're holding their cell phone. They're not talking to mom, dad, sister, anybody. That you're going to put that away, that you're going to really pay attention to who you're talking to. So that really led me to start thinking more about, I really want to do something. I loved my experience being Greek. Most everyone I've ever encountered has. And I really wanted to do something to kind of talk about this era of going through rush, getting through it in the best way, landing in the right place. And at the end of the day, the things that I was looking for, 25 years ago are still the same things that those young girls are looking for today. It's just in a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So I obviously used some etiquette skills when I went through rush long ago, but you're still going to use them today, doing it virtually, doing it in the house. And I think everyone needs to know that going in. If you've never talked about etiquette with your parents or your grandparents or at somewhere, you do need to think through those things. And sometimes I hate the word etiquette because it automatically scares people. It all goes back to the skills of being kindful and respectful. Every time, every single time, it goes back to that. Does that, I know that's a long answer to a question.
No, you're good. I think, is there an example or two that you would give of these are some ways to be kind and respectful when going through rush, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for asking that. One thing I tell young people is you're going to get asked some questions when you go through rush. You just are. Whether they put it as a yes or no answer, I want you to not give a yes or no answer. Are you having a good day today? I don't want you to say yes or no. I want you to say yes. I'm having a great day. My roommate and I were laughing because it was so hot as we were getting dressed. I mean, because where I live, it would be so hot getting dressed for rush and walking around campus. Yeah. But that you have something else to add beside yes or no. And that takes practice. If you're not used to doing that, if you're working with an etiquette coach or with your mom or a sister, you need to role play some of those. You need to have a yes or no answer. You also, sometimes people, they're getting ready to go through rush and they think, well, I don't want to ask any questions. I'm scared I'm going to ask the wrong thing. Oh, no. You need to be prepared to ask questions. You've got to be prepared to answer questions, and you need to be prepared to ask questions. So I always tell young people, honestly, have 2 or 3, you can't write it on your hand because they're going to see it, but you know a few questions you're going to ask before each party. If it's philanthropy day, you can ask something as simple as, why do you like this philanthropy? Why? Hear their answer.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to have, that's not a yes or no question. Why do you like this philanthropy? They're going to say something.
Yep.
For my party, we did a golf tournament every year. It was called the Kappa Classic at LSU. That's what we did. It was a big deal. It involved a number of the young people even on campus because golf was a big thing, but it also involved a lot of parents. We also, obviously, we gave that money to a certain organization. There was a lot I could have said. And on the chapter side, I really encourage those people that are rushing people. This is not a joke. I mean, you're in now and it's fun and you're great. You're starting to make your friends and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to just grab these girls from my high school or whatever. I want y'all to talk to these people and have answers. Why do you like your philanthropy? You pledged this. Did you? Why? What is your favorite event y'all do? Like a certain party. For me, it was Kappa Swing. We always had it in the fall. We had a jazz band. I still, to this day, I loved all 4 of those each year.
Yeah.
You need to have some answers. Even though you're in the sorority, the work is not over. Does that make sense? I feel like a lot of times people think, well, I'm in. This is fun. No, the work's not over. It's not over yet.
If you're talking to those potential new members, you do need to be able to answer some of those questions because they may have specific curiosities about whether it's the philanthropy, like you mentioned, or what is it you like about being a member of this chapter. Or I think a really good just phrase or question to have in your back pocket is tell me more about X. So tell me more about your experience in the chapter. Tell me more about your role as, if they're on a leadership team, as house manager, as chapter president, because then you get people talking. And I love that you said, don't just answer yes or no. That was something I didn't really get trained on until I was an adult and running my business. And I was doing a lot of TV appearances on the local news stations. And I found that, the interviewer, the news anchor, whoever you're talking to, they'll ask you a question. And I mean, you could certainly just say yes or no and just stand there and be mute. But you need to learn how to expand upon that, but in a concise way at the same time, because you don't want to just ramble. Sometimes I feel like now having that skill makes me more long-winded, but it certainly is so much better than just a clipped short answer that could be misconstrued as you being uninterested or not being a friendly person.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And kind of part of that is I always remind people what you put on that rush form. I was this, I did this. Mm-hmm. Don't tell false statements because chances are they've read through that. They're going to ask you. And if they ask you, you can't just say a 2 or 3 word answer. Mm-hmm. I want you to be passionate about that mission trip you went on. And I want you to tell her what you learned and why you loved it. Mm-hmm. And if you just kind of made that up, she's going to see through that. And that's not good. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's like lying on a resume. It's not quite to that level, but there's no point in falsifying anything. Just put your actual interest. Because otherwise what can happen is if you're putting down information that is just so true, you're not going to connect with the right group of women and you may land in the wrong organization. And the point is to find your group of people that you can relate with and that you want to spend your 4 years or however long at college with.
It's absolutely true. And that is really where my heart is, to make sure everyone going through knows. I mean, this is important and it's not about person A, person B, person C. It is about you. It is about you and what you value. I moved 4 hours from home to go to college. I was from a small town. And yes, my mom was what I did become. But the best thing she ever did for me is to say, go do you. I mean, I would love it if it worked out and you loved them, but she was in the sorority 23 years before. Mm-hmm. To go do you and figure out for you. And I can't imagine going through that process because it was still very stressful for me. Mm-hmm. And not really trying to figure out who I connected with mm-hmm. truly, because it wouldn't have been a good experience for me had I not connected with them truly.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think, unfortunately, at that age, when we are going through recruitment and we're coming into college, it all still feels like a popularity contest. And that really is not what it's about. It is about what we've continued to touch on, about finding a group of women that you connect with, that support causes that you agree with, and that, you want to make that part of your collegiate experience. It's not just some random, clique to join at all.
Correct. It is not. It is not. And, on the women I interviewed when I was working on this class, I saw, the older women, we all had a few things in common, which was lovely to really see, but our experiences were the same, and the friendships and the leadership skills and the giving back to the community where you end up, that is such a part of it. And the connection with people, that is such a special thing. And you want that. I want that for people. And I don't want them to make a decision, like you said, based on popularity, based on their best friend from high school or their cousin. This is about you. And for the long run of your life, it can be the most amazing thing that you did. One of the most amazing things. So let's do it right for you.
Yeah. Does that make sense? I agree. And I'm glad you touched on connection, because I think, you've talked about how COVID changed everything for us. Connection is something that a lot of people lost during that time at home, everything being topsy-turvy and getting canceled. And so I think there is such value in these students going through recruitment, becoming new members to these organizations and getting to connect with people, because it will make a difference in their experience.
It will. And it's a fun 4 years. I'd go back and do it. I don't know about you, but I certainly would.
Yeah, I totally would. That's what started my whole trajectory of my career path without me even knowing it.
Right.
Who knew sitting in my sorority house, my chapter house, that I was going to then end up doing those, being a designer, a decorator for those organizations all over the country. I never would have guessed.
It's so cool. And I love your story, because when I met you, I think Kappa had just built their new house. You and I had talked about that at LSU. And I thought about the time I spent in the Kappa house at LSU, the one I was in, the impact it had on me. It is so cool that you do that. And now you're doing it all over, which is like amazing. I remember asking you, do you only do it for your sorority? And you were like, no, Jennifer. But I was like, I just had to ask.
No, fair question. Fair question. So you've touched a couple times on this course that you have been working on. So let's kind of dive straight into that, because it is a sorority focused course that you will be launching later this summer. And I think people will be really excited to hear about it, because it's free.
It's free. And thank you so much for asking about it. I have been working on this. And as I mentioned earlier, I really, I know there's so many great coaches that will help people if they're really unfamiliar with this process. But really what I wanted to do is let people see, daughters, their moms, if they had never done this, dads too, to really let people see, okay, this was my experience. But as I mentioned, I've interviewed 7 people, all ages 18 to 70, ladies that really told snippets of their stories and how what they did in college really impacted them. And we really all had some common threads, which I thought was really cool. But it's a class, it's not hard. I think it will be fun to watch. You can listen to it as you drive. Because I have that counseling background, there are some questionnaires that they're really just for you. I want you to ask some questions about yourself, and I give you things to think about. Mm-hmm. I have one questionnaire based on if you had a coach, one on if you didn't. Coaches are great, but I really am hoping it helps people, right before they go do this. And if you get it, you can watch it again up until, it's going to be up all year, to help you find where you're supposed to be, to block out the noise and really focus on, okay, I get it. I see where this older lady, I heard her story, and I see what I want this to be for me based on what I've fallen in love with this week and really where I feel a connection. Because like I said, that's really what it's all about. So it was just, I've been wanting to do this for a couple of years, and I just thought, okay, I'm going to do it. This at the start of this year, I just really wanted to do it. So it'll be fun. people can find out when it launches and everything just by joining my newsletter, because it will come out as soon as it launches, and they'll just click to see everything. So it'll be easy as it can be.
Yeah. And so you shared with me some of the topics that you're focusing on are leadership skills, philanthropy, and then friendships, because you mentioned that those were some key things that you took away from your Greek experience. And so you wanted to help guide the students in the course towards focusing on those, right?
I did, because as you and I mentioned, and we both went through that process, you can get so caught up in, oh, that's the certain group, or that's or they have the best, quote unquote. That's really not what it's about. And this is something that really could be with you for a lifetime. These people, these skills, this whole organization that you're joining. So if you go into it that way, which I believe is the right way, you will come out just being so thankful and enjoy it and keep being a part of it. I mean, you and I both have friends that they did something for 4 years, and I'll say something to some of my friends, and they're like, no, I didn't go to the alumni meeting. Like they don't care. It was fun then, but they didn't really connect or care enough to follow the next 10, 20, 30 years with it.
Sure.
And I really think you should, if you really connected with that group and that organization. There's a lot said for that, and you can follow through. So yes, I do focus on those 3 things. And really, the women I interviewed, I didn't tell any of them my experience. I thought that was important. I didn't want them to know that. But truly, a common thread were those 3 things. Everyone at least said 2 of those words when I interviewed them, that was a common thing. So I thought that was really cool,
Yeah, no, I think that's really neat. I'm interested to see the course and see how it all shapes up once you get it launched. I have a different question now. You have mentioned a couple times people getting coaches. Are you talking about someone that coaches you to prepare to go through recruitment?
Yes, there are a number of ladies that do that, that you can pay them a fee. They'll help you do your resume. They'll help you get the references. They'll talk with you about wardrobe. And they will work with you on, okay, do you know what you're going to talk about today? Which that does tie into a little bit of etiquette. Those ladies they're attuned to that. That is important, especially if this is a foreign thing to you. No one in your family's done it. You're not sure what you're getting into. I do believe there is value in talking to one of those women. This course is not that. I think that's important to say. I'm not going to talk with anybody on the phone. It's really the experience and what I got out of it, and some guidance for you to find your place. Even if you've been working with a coach, this is still a great thing for you to do before you leave for Rush. But yes, there are people that this is what they do for a fee, is to help young ladies, which I think is great. I mean, we need help doing stuff,
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I just didn't know that type of coach existed. So when you referenced it a couple of times, I was like, am I understanding that right? So I just wanted to check.
Yes, there are definitely some. Yes.
So hot take question. What is your opinion of handwritten thank you notes?
I'm a huge fan of it. It's funny that you asked that. I'm asked that a lot. Is a text enough? I'm going to send the email. Those are great, but you are going to write a handwritten note. I don't care if your stationery is from Target. I don't care if it's from Key Circle Press, like the nicest stationery you could have. She's based in Alabama. You are going to write a note. And I encourage people to teach their children. Start writing a note. It can be 2 sentences. Handwritten notes, again, it all goes back to kindness and respect. It is such a respectful thing to do. It is kind to do. And especially in the business world nowadays, if you're hoping to get a promotion or hoping to get an in with a company, send them an email. Oh, great meeting. Thank you. It was great. Great to meet y'all. Love, da, da, da. But after that, the next day, I want a note in the mail. It doesn't have to be long. I mean, I've joked with you. I have the worst handwriting. People are like, oh, the worst penmanship. It takes me longer to write notes than most people, but you have got to do it. You've got to do it.
Yeah. I fully agree. So that was somewhat of a loaded question because, as most people who know me know, I am a huge fan of handwritten thank you notes. I love stationery, cannot have enough paper products, extra points if it's monogrammed, but whatever you want it to be. But yeah, I mean, I was reading a book the other day, a business book called The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You. And actually, that has a Southern C tied to it because the author was a moderator. She did a book signing at the event. I bought the book thinking there would be value in it. I had no idea how much I was going to love it. I end up buying it as gifts for a lot of people now. But that's sort of a sidebar. There was a section in the book. Have you read this book?
I have not. I bought some books from the Southern C2 and I have not gotten to one. I'm glad you told me that because I need one for spring break. I'll do that one. Great.
It's a very quick read, easy read. Okay. I would just kind of pick it up and read a chapter, every day or so, or, a couple of weeks. But anyway, the point is this section of the book, Lydia talks about receiving handwritten thank you notes and also sending them. But the point about her receiving them was there was someone that interned with her. And there wasn't a full-time position. I think also the student was going back to school. But after that, she kept periodically just receiving little handwritten thank you notes, little check-in notes, just saying, hey, would love for you to keep me in mind if anything opens up in your department. Hey, how are you? Remember that I'm out here. And every time Lydia would respond, usually via email, I think she says, hey, it was great to hear from you. We don't have any positions right now. Hope all is well. And then one day, someone came into her office and told her that she was leaving. And then that thank you note was sitting there on her desk. And she was like, oh, so I can move someone else in the department into this now open position and then bring in this former intern. So you just never know, I think, the seeds that you're planting by sending that thank you note. And I mean, you talked about it kind of playing into the connection and the kindness. Nobody stops anymore to do something for someone else. And so the fact that you take time to get out a pen and a paper and write something down and then mail it, it just really, I think people really appreciate that when they receive that note.
Yes, that is a great story. I'm going to have to email Lydia. That is a wonderful story. That's great.
Yeah. I loved it. I mean, I probably could have highlighted and tabbed a million things in that book, but because I do, I keep buying it for people I know, recent graduates, just other women in the working world, because I do think it has a lot of valuable little tidbits in it.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah. So Jennifer, before we close up, is there anything or just a couple of thoughts that you want to make sure that people take away from your episode here? Any key things that you would remind people in regards to etiquette and going through recruitment or just their time in their sorority world?
I would tell you the things I do want you, of course, to be kind and try to connect with people, look people in the eye. But I really want you to make an effort when you go through Rush to remember names. And that's hard for people. And I tell people that when you get back to your dorm or apartment, I really do encourage people to write down the names of the person that walked you around, because the next day, it's like that thank you note. When you go through the house, I want you to say, oh, hey, Liz, even if you're just waving to her because you're with another person, I want you to say people's name. That is important. People can do their research on when you say people's names, but saying people's names makes you more memorable, but it also makes them feel so good. And that's part of having good manners, making people feel good. So that's what I would tell them.
And when they introduce themselves, if you repeat it back, it helps you to remember it.
Completely. I'm glad you said that because I forgot to say that. When
someone that's something I've had to start employing because, you get to talking and then you're like, oh, what did they say their name was? But if you say it back, like, oh, Jennifer, it's great to see you.
Yes. It's such a great.
Oh, go ahead. It's
a good habit to be in, and it will help you in the working world. Remembering names is key. It is key.
It is. And I would say, I know you probably won't have your phone out during your time walking through a house, but you could probably, once you're back out walking to the next house, type their name in your phone in like a notes section while it's still fresh in your brain.
Yes, that is a great idea. That is a wonderful idea. I hadn't even thought of that. I'll be honest. That's a great idea. But remembering the names of the people you met will help you on both sides. Will help when they sit and vote that night that, oh, I saw Betty again today. She said hi, So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. So then kind of coming full circle, is there a place for handwritten thank you notes following recruitment appointments, or is that process just too quick that it probably doesn't make sense? Or maybe it depends on your campus setup too.
Yes, it is. Normally that process of going through Rush, you're so quick. I think COVID last year broke it up at some places.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I tell people. You know, I went through Rush from a small town and I had a very good Rush. I'll kind of base this on my experience. I did end up going where I had a family connection, but I remember going home, and I'll be honest, I mean, and I'm the manners teacher. I didn't send thank you notes that next week, but I remember going home and my mom saying, you know, you did meet some nice people, and they're, you know, wanted you to join them. She said, I really think it would be a good idea if you wrote those girls a note saying, you know, I really enjoyed meeting you. At LSU, we did all have a box. I mean, I could get people's addresses, even though it was a big campus. I did end up writing notes it was definitely, there were 4 or 5 girls I met in other places that I did like them. I really liked them. I just didn't as a whole see myself there. But I do, as I get older, feel that was so important, because, you know, when someone doesn't come your way, you're like, well, what did I do? Like, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
It definitely, I would see them on campus, you know, the next maybe year or two, because they were older, obviously, but it kept us connected, which I think is important. So my advice in that would be, you don't owe everyone down the row a note, but if you really did connect with someone and you didn't choose to go to their house, you're going to have to reach out to them and say how great it was to meet them. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think that's very good advice. And I like to ask that question because, you know, we're here touting, oh, send notes. But then sometimes it is situational. You just have to use some common sense and kind of feel out how the situation was.
Yes, for sure.
Well, good. Well, Jennifer, I mean, I could talk to you all day. We always have great conversations, and I really appreciate all of the insight that you brought to this episode. And I know that I'm not alone to say that we're very excited to hear and to listen to your course when it comes out later in the summer.
Thank you so much for having me, Liz. And I'm excited for all that you're doing. And I know we'll talk soon. So
yes. And I'll make sure we have your website and all your social handles in the show notes. So anyone that wants to connect with you can do that. So thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much, Liz. Have a great day.